and I came back from my mission and I moved into this house with these guys I didn't know.
Right.
And I signed a lease.
At school?
Yeah. I don't know how I got the apartment. I have no idea how I got it. I can't remember. But I ended up in this house. I had a room, and it was in this basement. And I had a room in the basement, and one of the other guys in the basement was gay in another room. I was like, and the second he was gone, I was in his room looking for porn and whatever else I could find. The second he's gone, and I found it, and I was like, I'm newly off my mission, and I was like, I went to my landlord and I told her what was going on, and I'm weeping, telling her I have to get out of this house, because if I don't, I'll be sucked into this. I've got to get out. And she was kind and really confused. It's like, okay, bye. But so I found another living situation, I don't know where, and I started going back to, I went to a same-sex therapist, or a reparative therapist, or whatever they call it. I remember going into his office for a session, and him basically telling me that, first of all, he said, sexual attraction between a man and a woman is what keeps a marriage together. And, he's like, when I have a fight with my wife, my desire for her is what, creates the impulse to go, reconcile with her. And, oftentimes, he's basically trying to tell me that, they have makeup sex or whatever, and that's what helps them, get, and I was like, well, this was the very first time I think I really stood up for myself, where I was like, well, why wouldn't that be the same if I'm only attracted to men? Like, why wouldn't that same dynamic be possible between two men? And, he didn't have an answer. And his best answer was he started telling me, he's like, if you don't drink caffeine, and if you watch it, yeah, for real, you watch your sugar intake, and you pray, and you read the scriptures, then you'll be able to manage this. And I remember thinking that it's over. And I remember walking out there, and I was just like, I think I started laughing. I was like, you are an idiot. That's what I remember thinking. I was like, you're an idiot. But that was a real turning point looking back, is that it was over. I was coming out. He was wrong. It was the first time I could see clearly that, he was wrong and I was right.
Did you date girls?
Not really. Barely. Little. Sort of. Not really. I felt so
honest.
I felt so guilty. Yeah, I felt so guilty. I didn't want to kiss him. I didn't want to. I felt I was a liar. And so, that's one of the only things that. In the end, that's the thing I really did right. I shouldn't say the only thing I did right. The thing I did right was I couldn't be dishonest. Yes, I was suicidal. Looking back, I don't know that there was ever real intention behind it, but I sure thought about it a lot. And if I could have just snapped my fingers and blinked out of existence, that would have been great. I was crazy. I was actually crazy. Nobody knew. I was literally splitting into pieces. I should have been hospitalized.
That's the funny thing is, you put on this Peter Priesthood, happy-go-lucky, whatever, and the parents never know until somebody's dead. And they're like, what?
Yeah, that was
They were such a sweet boy.
That was my senior year in high school, and if you look at the yearbook, I remember counting, because it was very important to me at the time, that I had more pictures, or maybe there was one other person in the school that had more pictures than I did in the yearbook. And it was student body officer, homecoming king, in the choir, directed plays, just all over the place. And so the picture was this
so successful,
popular, go-getter, proactive kid, and I wanted to kill myself. If this was the only way, if your path was the only way for you to get where you are now, would you change anything? And I wouldn't change anything. it's just what happened. I'd actually given it everything I could.
Yeah.
I actually had. I was like, and it was not going away. And, I had some pretty powerful spiritual experiences on my mission. And they are, I remember this girl, Tracy, asked me, she's like, after I'd come out, she's like, isn't there a contradiction between who you were before and who you are now? And I was like, on the surface, yeah. I had these spiritual experiences as a Mormon, and now I'm not a Mormon, and how can I reconcile those things? I was like, all I can say is that the same God that was there before is the same God I have now. It's just my point of view about that God has changed. And that there's those spiritual experiences, I don't invalidate them.
Right.
They just are what they were, and they reflected my understanding of God at that time. And there's no contradiction. It's seamless. When I came back from being a missionary, I was like, I tried. And I had a sense of God. And in some ways, that gave me the courage to start coming out. I had this, like, I felt like I could do it. And I still felt like I was jumping into the abyss, into the unknown. But I knew I couldn't stay in the church anymore. It was over. My dad asked me this, and I was shocked. He was like, I couldn't even believe the question came out of his mouth. Because he was like, if the Mormon church accepted gay marriage or gay homosexuality and gay unions, I can't remember how he raised it, would you come back? And I was like, first of all, I couldn't believe he was asking the question, but the answer was no. It's because my view has shifted so much. And I see that the Mormon church works really well for some people. My parents, it works really well for them. And ultimately, I have no idea what's true about God. All I know is my own experiences. So that's what I'm going to stick with. I'm going to leave it in everybody, my parents' belief about God, I'm going to try I wanted them to denounce the church in my heart so much. Like, I couldn't really respect my parents until, they would give up their beliefs and stand up for what, but like, that's just intolerant and arrogant. I know what I believe. I'm not afraid to share my opinion, but I can't make anybody change. And I date my coming out to my 24th birthday. That's when I knew it was done. I would never ever go back to Mormonism again.
And how'd your life change?
Well, so I had defined myself by all these things that I wouldn't do. Like, I wouldn't drink, I wouldn't do drugs, I wouldn't smoke, I wouldn't have sex. And so I did all those things really fast. And this is the crazy irony of it all. It was like out of the frying pan and into the fire. I had a great time. It was super, super fun. The only problem was that for me, the phase didn't pass. I had this other thing going on, which had to do with being an addict. And so by the time I was 27, the fun was over, and I was still doing it.